Welcome to MathLink's Web PD, delivering a blank paper lesson, saving for a printer. Depending upon your goals, what we refer to as a blank paper lesson may have several benefits. We'll discuss how we strip away details to create a blank paper lesson and discuss the relative benefits of these as compared to structured workspace. So, what's a blank paper lesson? Typically, a blank paper lesson begins with a context, picture, or problem partially shown or stated, and there's open student workspace. Students can't get started without further information from the teacher. Let's see how this one, saving for a printer, might play out. Here's the problem, but it's not fully stated. This is to create some sort of visual image in the students' heads that will get them thinking. We strongly recommend, if at all possible, letting students read silently on their own. When the instructor or one student in the class reads, students don't have to engage in the process. When they read on their own and begin to formulate questions, they become fully engaged. Here are two good starter questions. Feel free to pose one at a time or both together. Once students start to ask questions, simply chart everything they say without answering. Let them get out everything they're thinking and refrain from judgment. Thank them for their participation. And let them know that if a question pops up later, the class still wants to hear what they have to say. Dignify all students by addressing the questions as best you can, saving the answers to the most necessary ones for last. Here's some more information about the problem. Ask for any follow-up questions. Now decide on a question we want the students to answer. Since students will be studying techniques for solving systems of linear equations, let's drive students towards this question. Then ask these important questions, which are kind of the same question asked two different ways. Again, chart all student responses and discuss which of these the class could try. Here are three possibilities. A table is a pretty student-friendly way to track data. We need to think about the headings, which is also defining the variables. How do we start off the table? Probably with how much Benny has at the very beginning. A graph is also a great way to look at the story. It may not be students' go-to method, but it's an important representation. We kind of gave it away that we'd use one since our blank paper shown on slide 3 isn't really blank. It has a grid on it. You don't have to use that sheet. I've had students draw their own graphs on line paper, but that can be time-consuming and sloppy. Or sometimes I just have students use graph paper for the whole blank paper exercise, which helps students organize their graphs, tables, or anything else. How do we label the axes? The same variables from the table. How do we scale the axes and title the graph? Those are good topics of discussion before moving on. There doesn't have to be consensus. If students want to do these things differently, that could be a bonus later when summarizing the work and could lead to some nice discussions. Equations are another important representation and may be the one that our students are the least comfortable using at this point. But in time, they'll see the utility and efficiency with equations. With a table and graph, we've probably discussed variables already, but why not formalize it here? Let's talk about how these variables are related. Here's a system. How are we going to solve it? Here's the payoff. And depending where we are in our curriculum, we use the table, the graph, an algebraic method like substitution or elimination to solve it. Here's a worksheet version of a similar lesson. Take a second to think about how the work students do on this structured workspace compares to the work that we just did on blank paper. Both have benefits for students. Here are some features that make the structured workspace lesson an attractive option. Some students might thrive with the scaffolding. Many students have a hard time copying work onto a blank page from a textbook or from the board. Some students are not auditory learners at all, and a blank paper lesson might require listening skills they might not have acquired yet. We've found through our classroom experiences that if there is a space to write, many students feel compelled to fill it. The page is doable, and many students feel very successful upon completing something. On the other hand, here are some potential benefits of a blank paper lesson. Wondering and wanting to know details can be motivating. The learning experience is matched more to the learning styles of the class, and the lesson feels more organic. Your students may surprise you with their creative or innovative thinking. They might push the lesson in a way you hadn't thought it would go, and that might be a great option. You might get to know your students' thought processes better. How do we plan a blank paper lesson? It's not suited for every problem. Make sure you can strip away details and then engage students in a Q&A process to get them engaged and motivated when doling out the details. And be strategic in doling out the most crucial details at the end. I've seen students just itching to get that last detail so they can jump in and get to work. Be aware of learning goals and outcomes from the start. Know the important questions that will promote student thinking and anticipate student questions. It's also really important to try to anticipate misconceptions and mistakes. These things will happen. Also, think about different ways that your students might correctly approach the problem. Nothing is worse than a student doing something correctly, but being shut down because the teacher is not familiar with what they're doing and thinks it's wrong. Think about how you might have students follow up with the work upon completing the task at hand. Thanks so much for watching. See you next time.